Welcome to ReadingBear. Today we've got a story where OP's parents tried to sell their house while they were at work, claiming they're the actual owners. This happened a few months ago, and I'm still shaking my head about the absolute audacity of some people, even when those people happen to be your own parents. For context, I'm in my early 30s and bought my first house about 3 years ago. It's nothing fancy, a modest 3-bedroom ranch in a decent neighborhood, but it's mine. I saved up for years, went through all the paperwork, mortgage applications, inspections, the whole 9 yards. My name is on the deed. My name is on the mortgage, and I pay every single bill that comes through the door. My parents, however, seem to have a different understanding of the situation. It started innocently enough. When I first bought the place, my parents were genuinely helpful. My dad helped me with some minor repairs, and my mom would occasionally bring over dinner or help with cleaning when I was swamped with work. I gave them a spare key for emergencies, thinking it would be practical in case something happened or if I locked myself out. That was my first mistake. The boundary issues began slowly. I'd come home from work to find my mom had rearranged my kitchen cabinets because she thought her way was more efficient. My dad would show up unannounced on weekends to work on projects I hadn't asked for. When I politely mentioned that I'd prefer them to call first, my mom would get this hurt expression and say something like, "I was just trying to help. I thought you'd appreciate having family who cares." The guilt trips worked for a while. I let the small intrusions slide because, honestly, it was easier than dealing with the drama. My parents have always been the type to take a mile when you give them an inch, but I figured it was harmless enough. I was wrong about that too. The situation escalated over the following months. My parents started referring to my house as our family home and would invite relatives over for gatherings without asking me. They'd make decisions about landscaping, decorating, and even minor renovations without consulting me. When I'd object, they'd act like I was being unreasonable. "We're just looking out for the property value," my dad would say. "You'll thank us later." The breaking point should have been when I came home one day to find they'd hired a contractor to redo my bathroom tiles without my permission. I was livid, but they played the victim card so hard that I ended up apologizing for raising my voice. They paid for the work, insisted they were just being generous, and made me feel like an ungrateful child for being upset about it. But that wasn't the breaking point, not even close. The real breaking point came on a Tuesday afternoon when I got a call at work from my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson. She's a sweet older lady who lives across the street and has always been friendly but not intrusive. That day, she sounded confused and a little concerned. "Honey, I hope you don't mind me calling, but there are people at your house with a realtor, and they're showing it to what looks like potential buyers. I thought maybe you were selling and just hadn't mentioned it, but then I realized your car wasn't in the driveway and you're probably at work." I felt my stomach drop. "What do you mean, showing it to buyers?" "Well, there's a woman with a clipboard and a fancy car, and she's walking around the outside of the house with a couple. Your parents are there too, talking to them like they own the place." I just thought it was odd and wanted to make sure everything was okay. I thanked Mrs. Patterson, told my boss I had an emergency, and drove home faster than I probably should have. My mind was racing the entire way. There had to be some reasonable explanation. Maybe my parents were getting quotes for more work on the house. Maybe the realtor was in the wrong neighborhood. Maybe I was jumping to conclusions. I pulled into my driveway behind a sleek sedan with real estate company magnets on the doors. Through my living room window, I could see people moving around inside my house. My house, the house that I owned, that I was still paying a mortgage on, that had my name on every legal document. I walked through my own front door to find a well-dressed woman in her 40s pointing out the features of my kitchen to a young couple. My parents were standing nearby, nodding along and adding commentary about the neighborhood and the school district. The realtor was the first to notice me. "Oh, hello! You must be the son. Your parents were just telling us about the family history with this property." I looked at my parents, who had suddenly gone very quiet. "Family history?" My mom jumped in quickly. "We were just explaining how much we've invested in this place over the years. All the improvements, the love and care we've put into it." The young couple looked between us with growing confusion. The woman spoke up. "Are you selling together? As a family?" Before I could answer, my dad stepped forward. "We're the primary decision makers for this property. Our son lives here, but we handle all the major decisions." I felt something snap inside me. "Excuse me, could I speak with my parents privately for a moment?" The realtor nodded and gestured for the couple to step outside to look at the yard. Once they were gone, I turned to face my parents. "What exactly is going on here?" My mom had the decency to look slightly embarrassed, but my dad just crossed his arms defensively. "We've been talking. and we think it's time for you to move into something more reasonable. Maybe a nice apartment, or a smaller place. This house is too much for a single person, and frankly, we're tired of worrying about you maintaining it properly. You're tired of worrying about me maintaining my own house? It's not really just your house, though, is it? My dad continued. We've put thousands of dollars into improvements. We've spent countless hours here. We practically live here ourselves most weekends. And let's be honest, without our help with the down payment, you didn't help with my down payment. The money we saved you on repairs and improvements could have gone toward a down payment fund. Same difference. I stared at him in disbelief. Are you actually trying to sell my house right now? We're exploring options, my mom said carefully. The market is really good right now, and we found a lovely young family who would take great care of the place. We thought you could take the equity and find something more suitable. More suitable according to who? According to us, my dad said firmly. We know what's best for this family. The realtor knocked on the door at that moment. Sorry to interrupt, but the buyers have a few more questions and another appointment in 20 minutes. I looked at my parents, then at the realtor, then back at my parents. Something in my expression must have shifted, because my mom suddenly looked nervous. Of course, I said calmly. Please, let's continue the showing. My parents visibly relaxed, clearly thinking they'd won. The realtor and the young couple came back inside, and I listened as my parents continued to play host in my own home. They talked about all the wonderful features, the improvements they'd made, how well maintained everything was. The asking price seems very reasonable for this neighborhood. The potential buyer mentioned to my parents. Well, we just want to see it go to a good family, my mom replied warmly. That's when I decided to embrace the role they'd assigned themselves. If they wanted to be the decision makers for this property, if they wanted to handle all the major decisions, then I was going to let them do exactly that. Actually, I interrupted, I think there are a few things potential buyers should know about the property that my parents might not have mentioned. The realtor pulled out her notepad, ready to take notes. The couple perked up with interest. First, there are some ongoing legal issues with the property that will need to be resolved before any sale can go through. My parents stared at me in alarm. What legal issues? My mom whispered. Well, there's the matter of the current mortgage, for starters. And then there's the question of legal ownership and who actually has the authority to sell. The realtor's pen stopped moving. I'm sorry, I think there might be some confusion. Who exactly is the legal owner of this property? I pulled out my phone and opened my mortgage app, showing the screen to the realtor. According to this, the mortgage is in my name, the deed is in my name, and I'm the only person legally authorized to sell this house. The color drained from my parents' faces. The realtor looked between us with growing concern. I think there's been a misunderstanding, the potential buyer said slowly. Are your parents not co-owners? No, they're not. They have a key, and they've done some work on the house, but they have no legal ownership stake whatsoever. The realtor closed her notepad. I'm going to need to see some documentation before we can proceed with any showing. Of course, I said. I have all the paperwork in my office. The deed, the mortgage documents, the insurance policies, everything. All in my name. My parents had gone completely silent. The realtor was looking increasingly uncomfortable, and the potential buyers were clearly ready to leave. Perhaps we should reschedule once the ownership questions are clarified, the woman suggested diplomatically. After they left, my parents immediately went into damage control mode. Why did you embarrass us like that? My mom demanded. You were going to ruin everything, my dad added. We had buyers who were genuinely interested. I sat down on my couch, in my living room, in my house, and looked at them calmly. You want to make decisions about this property? You want to handle the major issues? Fine. I'm going to let you do exactly that. They looked confused, but hopeful. Since you clearly feel like you're the real owners here, I'm going to start treating you like the real owners. That means you can handle all the owner responsibilities. What do you mean? My mom asked cautiously. I mean, the mortgage payment is due next week. Since you're making the decisions about selling the house, you can make the decision about paying the mortgage too. My dad scoffed. Don't be ridiculous. You can't just stop paying your mortgage. You're right. The owners can't stop paying the mortgage. So, the owners, that's you two, according to your conversation with the realtor, need to make sure it gets paid. I pulled out the mortgage statement and set it on the coffee table. It's due on the 15th. The payment is just over $2,000. My parents stared at the paper like it might bite them. And then there's the property tax bill that came last week. Since you're so concerned about the property value and making improvements, I'm sure you'll want to handle that too. I went to my office and came back with a stack of papers. Property taxes, homeowner's insurance, water bill, electric bill, gas bill, trash service, lawn service, and the contractor payment for that bathroom renovation you decided to do. My mom was shaking her head. Now wait a minute, we never said we'd pay your bills. But you did say you were the primary decision makers for this property. You told strangers that you handle all the major decisions. You tried to sell my house without my permission. So I'm letting you handle the major decisions, starting with how to pay for everything. My dad was getting red in the face. This is absurd. You can't just saddle us with your expenses. I'm not saddling you with anything. I'm giving you exactly what you wanted, complete control over this property. But here's the thing about owning property. It comes with responsibilities. I sat back down and picked up my phone. I'm also going to need you to handle the insurance claim for the roof damage from that storm last month. The adjuster wants to schedule an inspection, and since you're making the decisions about property maintenance, you can deal with that. We don't know anything about insurance claims. Well, you'll figure it out. You seemed pretty confident about your decision-making abilities when you were talking to that realtor. My mom tried a different approach. Sweetie, we were just trying to help. We thought you might be interested in selling, and when we saw how much interest there was. Did you actually list my house for sale? The guilty look that passed between them told me everything I needed to know. Show me, I said. After a lot of hemming and hawing, my dad finally pulled out his phone and showed me the real estate listing. There it was, my house, with photos taken from inside and outside, listed for sale with my parents listed as the contact information. You listed my house without my permission, using photos you took while I was at work, and you've been fielding calls from potential buyers? We were just testing the market, my mom said weakly, testing the market for a house you don't own and have no legal right to sell. I took screenshots of the listing with my phone, then looked at them seriously. Here's what's going to happen. Since you want to be the owners so badly, you're going to take full responsibility for this situation. You're going to contact every single person who responded to that listing and explain that there was an error, that you don't actually own the house, and that it's not for sale. That's embarrassing, my mom protested. Not as embarrassing as being charged with attempted real estate fraud. Their eyes went wide. Oh, yes, I looked it up while you were talking to the realtor. Attempting to sell property you don't own, especially while claiming to be the owner, is actually a crime. A pretty serious one. I let that sink in for a moment, but I'm willing to let you handle this the way you've been wanting to handle everything else, yourselves. You created this mess by claiming to be the decision makers, so you can fix it by making the decision to clean it up. My dad was looking pale now. What exactly are you asking us to do? I'm not asking you to do anything. I'm telling you what you're going to do if you want to avoid having this become a legal matter. You're going to take down that listing immediately. You're going to contact everyone who showed interest and explain the mistake. You're going to return any deposits or earnest money you might have collected. We didn't collect any money, my mom said quickly. Good. That makes things simpler. You're also going to pay for any costs associated with that realtor showing, since you hired her without my authorization. We didn't hire her, my dad objected. She was working with the listing service. The listing service that you use to list a house you don't own? He shut up. And most importantly, I continued, you're going to return my spare key and never enter this house again without my explicit permission. Now wait just a minute. My dad started, but I held up a hand. I'm not done. Since you've made it clear that you consider yourselves to be the real decision makers here, I'm going to let you make one more decision. You can choose between two options. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the yard they'd been so proudly showing off to strangers. Option 1. You acknowledge that this is my house, that I'm the only legal owner, that you had no right to try to sell it, and you agree to respect normal boundaries going forward. You clean up the mess you created with the listing. You return my key, and we try to repair our relationship. My parents looked relieved. That option didn't sound so bad. Option 2. You continue to insist that you have some kind of ownership, stake, or decision-making authority over this property. In which case, I'll be happy to let you prove it in court when I file charges for attempted fraud and have you trespassed from the property. The relief vanished from their faces. Those are your options. You want to make decisions about this property? Then decide. My mom immediately started crying. You can't be serious about pressing charges against your own parents. Try me. My dad was still trying to bluster his way through. You're being completely unreasonable. We put work into this place. We have some stake in it. Show me the paperwork that gives you a legal stake in this property. It's not about paperwork, it's about family. It's about property ownership, which is actually entirely about paperwork. And since all the paperwork has my name on it, I'm the one who gets to make the decisions. I sat back down and looked at both of them. You have until tomorrow morning to take down that listing and start making those phone calls. You have until tomorrow evening to return my key. And you have until the end of the week to decide which option you're choosing. Because if you haven't made it clear by then, I'll assume you're choosing option 2. My mom was sobbing now. We never meant for it to go this far. We just thought, you thought you could sell my house without my permission? And I'd just go along with it? We thought you'd see the potential profit and realize it was a good opportunity. Even if I wanted to sell my house, even if it was a good financial decision, the choice would be mine to make, not yours. My dad finally seemed to be grasping the seriousness of the situation. What do you want us to say to the people who called about the listing? The truth, that you made a mistake, that you don't own the house, and that it's not actually for sale. If they ask why you listed it in the first place, tell them you got confused about the ownership situation. That makes us look like idiots. You should have thought about that before you tried to sell someone else's house. They left shortly after that, both looking shell-shocked. I spent the rest of the evening looking up the legal ramifications of what they'd done, and was honestly surprised at how serious it could have been if I'd decided to press charges. The next morning, I woke up to find the listing had been taken down. My mom called around lunchtime to let me know she'd contacted the 3 families who had expressed serious interest and explained the situation. She sounded mortified, which was probably the first genuine emotion she'd shown through this whole thing. My dad dropped off my spare key that evening. He tried one more time to argue that they'd been acting in my best interest, but his heart wasn't really in it anymore. We just wanted what was best for you, he said. What's best for me is having parents who respect my boundaries and treat me like an adult. We do treat you like an adult. Adults don't have their parents try to sell their house without permission. He didn't have an answer for that. Over the following weeks, they chose option 1, though not without some grumbling. They acknowledged that I was the sole owner of the house and that they'd overstepped. The apologies felt more obligatory than heartfelt, but at least they were admitting fault. The really satisfying part came about a month later when I got a call from someone claiming to be from the State Real Estate Commission. Apparently, one of the families my parents had contacted about the mistaken listing had filed a complaint, thinking the whole thing was some kind of scam or illegal flipping operation. I had to explain the situation to the investigator, including providing documentation of my ownership and copies of the listing my parents had created. The investigator seemed more amused than anything else by the end of the call. So your parents tried to sell your house without your knowledge or permission? That's correct. And they listed themselves as the contact persons and claimed to be the owners? Yes. And when caught, they claimed they were just testing the market for you? Also correct. I could hear him typing notes. Well, technically what they did could be considered a form of real estate fraud, but since no money changed hands and they've corrected the situation, we're probably just going to file it as a complaint, resolved by the parties involved. That works for me. Although, he added, you might want to let them know that if something like this happens again, the consequences would be much more serious. The Real Estate Commission doesn't take kindly to people misrepresenting property ownership, even if they're family. I made sure to pass that message along to my parents word for word. The relationship with my parents is still somewhat strained, but it's improving slowly. They've been much better about asking permission before coming over, and they haven't made any more major decisions about my property without consulting me first. My mom still occasionally makes comments about how she thinks I should decorate or maintain the house, but now, when my dad starts to agree with her, she shushes him and reminds him that it's not their decision to make. The funniest part of the whole situation happened a few weeks ago when my dad was visiting and noticed that I'd been having some issues with my garbage disposal. You know, I could probably fix that for you, he offered. That would be great, thanks. He looked surprised that I'd accepted so easily. Really? Of course. You're offering to help with the repair, and you asked first. That's exactly how this is supposed to work. He actually smiled at that. I guess it is. The garbage disposal works perfectly now, and more importantly, my parents seem to finally understand the difference between being helpful family members and being presumptuous pseudo-owners. I still own my house. I still make all the decisions about my house. And my parents have learned that claiming ownership of something doesn't magically make it yours, no matter how much work you've put into it. The moral of the story? Be careful what authority you claim to have, because someone might just decide to let you prove it. And when you can't, the consequences are entirely your responsibility to handle. Sometimes the best way to deal with people who want to control everything is to let them try, and then watch them realize they're in way over their heads. My parents wanted to be the decision makers for my property, so I gave them exactly what they asked for, the responsibility that comes with those decisions. They learned pretty quickly that they preferred being helpful family members over being responsible property owners, especially when the property in question was never actually theirs to begin with. And now, whenever they start getting too involved in decisions that aren't theirs to make, all I have to do is mention mortgage payments or property taxes, and they suddenly remember their place. It's amazing how quickly people can develop respect for boundaries when they realize what's at stake if they cross them. The house is still mine. The boundaries are finally established, and my parents have learned a valuable lesson about the difference between being supportive and being presumptuous. I'd call that a win all around. Anyway, thank you for watching. See you again tomorrow.